Hey, welcome to another show of Flip Your Switch. I'm here with Calvin Lawrence, who wrote this book. This book is a real powerful book. Opened my eyes, woke me up on some things much needed in the Black community here in Canada. We're going to discuss a lot of things over this book. And on page 246, Calvin talks about being the first, the best, the most intelligent, that the RCMP should have used them for certain things that they didn't use them for. In other words, they negated the best, the most intelligent, the one with the most energy, and we're going to discuss that in depth in this book. So how you doing, Kelvin, and welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
So my opening line was, they said you said in your book on page 246 that they missed you in a sense, that they missed using the best that they have to do this. So all our parents tell us to grow up, be nice guys, and the ones in this neighborhood, there was cops in this neighborhood, to be cops, and they always say, to be the best at what you're going to do. And you aspire to be that. So can you tell us a little about your introduction into the police force, which resulted in this book?
Well, I was of the same impression as a young person that we were supposed to work hard. And if you work hard, it would be rewarded through your endeavors and through other people in charge who would make sure that you were rewarded. And this didn't turn out to be the case. In fact, it didn't turn out to be the case for most Black people, for Black people who were Black police officers. It just happens that I was able to gain evidence to show the core values of the organizations had nothing to do with the way that Black police officers were treated covertly.
Okay, in this neighborhood, we had a guy named Stoney Johnson. He was the first Black detective that I know about. And then he had a younger brother named Dexter Johnson, who was in this neighborhood, tried to be a cop, and ended up as court security. You write in your book that you were dissed by the community in a sense as soon as you became a cop. We never did that here to him. He played basketball. He hung out with us. He didn't do anything criminal, of course, but we didn't diss him in that sense. We didn't call him an Uncle Tom because we knew that he was needed in the police force. And why wasn't that seen in your community back then? The value of you stepping up to the plate, in essence, to help your community.
Well, if you go back to the Black Panthers coming to the community, I don't really think that the police went through a conversion, 100% conversion that Black police officers were going to be hired. I think down the road, Black police officers would have been hired, but I don't think it would have been to the extent of the number that were hired within the 3 or 4 years. Now, you had some people in the Black community say, we want Black cops. So that has to be discussed. You want Black cops because you want Black cops to let you go. You want Black cops to treat you with respect and dignity. You want Black cops, and you're wrongly thinking that they will automatically will treat you in this manner, or will they be more harsher on the Black community just to have some of the white police officers say, he's okay, he can be trusted.
So, and also you mentioned that your mindset is one of a cop. You trained for that. It's part of your mindset. You mentioned that in your book. My mindset was that of a criminal promoter. That's what I did. That's what I aspired to be. That's what I wanted to be when I was a little kid. And that's what I grew up to be. So in essence, we're polar opposites in our desire. You wanting to be the epitome of law enforcement and me wanting to be the epitome of gangsterism. However, our community was similar. We're Nova Scotians. Our community was the same, and we had to fit in. You had to fit in. You're now retired. I had to fit in. I'm now retired, and we're now back into communities trying to help our respective communities. Is there anything you want to say to up-and-coming people that want to be a cop in a general sense, and juxtaposition that with someone who wants to be a gangster, and those two things can't then meet successfully? There have to be at polar opposites, always. You have to always be on the mindset of a cop. I don't have to always be on the mindset of a criminal, but it's hard for me to release that kind of thinking pattern.
It's true, very true. But in the other side of that, where they wanted, people say we want Black police officers, there were other police officers who said, well, you're an Uncle Tom, or you're a white man's nigger, which came up often. And I could see by the demeanor of some white police officers that why they would feel that way. So I had empathy for both, but this has to be taken apart. But what I would say to another police officer, to another black person who wants to be a police officer, become a police officer. Because there are 9 major areas of people activity that we work through on a daily basis: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Every one of those areas, there are landmines called white supremacist behavior. So if you don't want to be subjected to white supremacist behavior, you have to do one of 2 things. You get hired by your own community. We have to put in place where I, as a person with some skills, can be hired by my own community. Or you can stay and you can watch Search for Tomorrow on TV. Nobody ever bothered.
That's right.
But to go through this, what I call assimilation fantasies. Assimilation fantasies gives you the illusion of inclusion. And because we do not have a cultural base, like the Semites of the Jewish religion, like the Chinese, like the Italians.
We don't have a cultural credit union.
That's right.
Yeah.
We don't have a cultural credit union. Then we do not have overseers that see that we are treated fairly. So we're picked off either by racial tailoring, which is minimizing your accomplishments or restricting your opportunities, or racial showcasing, where you're the first or the highest and the only. So if we do not have our base, then we will be subjected to that for the rest of our lives in any one or more of those 9 major areas of people activity.
Yeah, you also mentioned in your book that you've seen some behavior from other white officers, and you couldn't interject because you were new on the force, and had you said something, you'd immediately be fired or ostracized in some manner. And I'm going to give you an example of that because it changed my focus of policing. I was 16 years old, walking along Spadina College Street towards Yonge Street, just past 52 Division. Cop car pulls over. I'm with one white guy and my partner, Owen Crookendale. We're in the car. They cut the white guy loose. They tell us we're trying to make the area between University and Jarvis black free. We don't want no niggers downtown. Their exact words. Took us to the station. They're berating us. They're calling us all kind of names. They're on me. I'm a mongrel. I'm a half-breed. I'm this. You know, that goes. And they're on Crookendale. He looks like a monkey. He's this. He's that. He's got all kind of nigger germs on him and all that. And then a black cop walked in the room. Nice big tough guy, bigger than the 2 other cops put together. And Crookendale says, "Call us those names now, man. Call us those names now." And he goes, "Hey, boy, go upstairs and get me a coffee as black as this nigger here." And the cop did it. Came back and handed the coffee. And I was like, fuck, man. I didn't want to see that. It just totally, I had no faith in black cops from that point on. I knew they couldn't help me in a sense because of that. And that was an experience of yours. Can you talk about that just a little?
Well, I see, I talk about communication. I teach communication. Body language is probably 60% of communication. Then your tone. Now your tone denotes your attitude. And then, of course, is what you say. We talk about police brutality as if it were physical all the time, but it's not. It's also
in that case for me. Yeah.
And I can leave you feeling demoralized, abused, and there's nothing you can do about it because I didn't touch you. I abused you through all of 3 areas of communication. For me, I've never had a situation where somebody would go off racially. Maybe it was just me, whatever, but with the other.
You mean around you?
Around me, yes.
Not to you.
Yeah. Well, to me too, but it was, you divide it up. There's bantering, there's sarcasm, cops are sarcastic, and then there's the real deal. The real deal, nobody messed with that. They would try and poke you, goat you, or goat me, but it didn't happen. But from a physical standpoint, I only had one situation where a black person was going to be kind of roughed up, and I said, no, it's not going to happen. And that would cross color lines. Nobody's going to start beating people up. I mean, you got to use force, But in front of me, it wouldn't happen. I wasn't brought up that way. I was taught to protect myself and fight back, but to go out and actually abuse somebody physically and I stand there and watch it, no, it's not happening.
Well, that makes you an anomaly from my perspective, because most people have to play the game, tote the line. And that bothers me the most, because I've seen it in the penitentiary system, and I also seen it with police, and I've seen police hurt by the fact that they couldn't react or do something. And I see them a few days later and they look at me with that look like, man, I wish I could have did something to help you, but I couldn't do anything to help you. So I saw it. But let's go back to the Black Panthers, Black Cop. Black Panthers came in 1967 to
67-ish, yeah.
And then they entrenched themselves in the community. It changed the community.
Well, basically what they said is, look, we're doing this in the U.S. Do you want us here? And if you know Nova Scotia from Black perspective was very conservative. And so there were a number of people who just grabbed onto it. And there were a number of people who said, no, this scares us. But the backlash to the white community was such that the most gains of certain areas, including policing, was done when they were there.
And you also mentioned in your book that not the whole community embraced the Black Panthers coming into the community.
No.
It created that change. So here in Toronto, we had the same thing. Warren Hart, an undercover agent for the Trudeau government, entrenched himself and ingratiated himself into this community and went fishing for Black radicals because there were really none here. So he created a group of Black radicals, criminalized them, and then ratted them out. And in my book, I talk about it. And I also have Warren Ullman, the former Solicitor General, mentioning that had happened. So those were the tactics used by the police at that time. And then you just joined the police force at that very time. They're using these underhanded tactics to attack what they think is Black radicalism in Canada when there really wasn't any. What was your experience in that when you got into the mix of things and you're looking like it's not really what they said it is?
Well, unlike you, I had a very, let's say, a closed environment. My father protected me. He wasn't too concerned about big issues as long as his son was okay. And I laughed because he made sure that I was okay. So I was thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool. Black Panthers, the Black community, Black people in authority, which some people in white society don't want.
Exactly.
But there comes a time, I say it takes about 5 years to know your style and to figure things out a little bit. And there comes a time that you have to make a decision. And the decision was that I was going to do police work my way. Now, it didn't mean that I was going to be a radical. It didn't mean that. But when somebody said to me that you and my friend Ricky were okay, but the rest are all niggers, and you can't go back into the Black community, that was dismissed immediately. Both were dismissed immediately. I hung out in the community. I was a younger person. I went to the clubs. I went around. So I was just going back to the community. But what the people saw was that I didn't just go in the community and hunt. I went back and socialized. Some people didn't like it. Some people did like it. But I was going where I wanted. I grew up there, played there. I'm going back. Yeah.
We had Stoney Johnson and Dexter Johnson here doing the same thing. And I had a couple other cousins that were Greys and Upshaws that joined the force. Basically said they were able to come back to the community because the community somehow didn't ostracize them like they would if it was a Nova Scotian community. I'm talking about embracing Nova Scotian cops and not ostracize them. So in our family function, we have cops there. We also have gangsters there. We just don't talk shop out of respect for each other.
Right.
Yeah. Was that like for you in Halifax at that time?
There wasn't a big drug scene then. Yeah. So I was at parties where I had arrested people. Some people were they just hated my guts. Okay, that's the life I chose.
Lawrence, turn your head,
That's right. That's it. So, but I think I have to ask myself, well, why? You read what happened to me in the book. It happened consistently, and I often ask myself, well, why? Why is this happening? And I think it's because I was my own person as a Black man, and this scared the hell out of some people. But I can't answer that because the people who perpetrated this deception and wrote on boards, and left notes in my basket saying "fuck up, nigger."
And you had nobody's footsteps to follow.
That's the other side. Yeah. I can give. This is one of the reasons too I wrote the book is that I can sit down with Black candidates for policing and give them the good and the bad and the ugly. They don't have to accept it, but at least they have something to go by. I didn't have anything.
So they look at you now as Kevin the real deal or Lawrence the real deal or?
No, I think that when they compare the policing of today with the policing the way I did it in my own community, I think because they're older now, and I think that most people are pretty satisfied. Some people are diehard haters of me.
You can't. Everybody can't love you.
That's right. Yeah.
As long as everybody doesn't hate you.
Yeah, well, that's true. So that's
So, Kelvin, let's talk about something that's dear to both our hearts. I'm a boxing coach. You're a boxing coach. You and I almost were going to fight. You're the heavyweight champ in 1974.
75. I won the
75, and I was going to fight you. So I fought a fight for the Eastern Canadian Championship. I lost a split decision. I was up all night. I had the flu. I was double bunked with Brian Gibson.
I know
you know Brian
well.
Gibson?
He was
So 2 a.m, he gets up and he says, listen, bro, man, I got to fight too. You're up making a lot of noise. I'm sneezing snot and I'm drunk Nova Histics. I'm stoned out of my tree. I didn't know. So I sat on the stairs in the hotel, big blanket around me, trying to sweat out this cold. Fought the fight. I got hurt. It was a split decision. And then they phoned me about a month later and they said, we disqualified the guy you fought because he had a pro fight. We found out he had a pro fight. Do you want to fight you? I guess it would have been you. And I said, I haven't trained in 3 weeks. Give me a week. And a week later, I just said, I don't think I can do it. And then I read your book the other night and I'm like, almost brought me to tears because I said to myself, man, how stupid were you? All you had to do was say, yes, brave it. And you didn't get to fight that fight. I'd have went in your place, man. It's as simple as that, yeah.
And the 76 Olympics, where I was supposed to go, they didn't send a heavyweight then.
No heavyweight. So so for the last 50 years, they didn't send a heavyweight to the 1976 Olympics because I just got out of jail and they didn't want to have a con there. But the truth is they didn't want to have you, the black cop, there. That was the truth, the reality. That's the reality. My reality was different for all these years.
They did have a person that was involved in crime in the championships.
And who was that?
That was
because I was living in Montreal.
His name escapes me right now, but I think he was involved in motorcycle.
There you go. Okay.
But I didn't know him.
Bernie Gwynnon. You're mentioning him because Bernie Gwynnon fought coming out of Millhaven and won a Pan Am medal at the time.
That's right.
Middleweight.
It was.
Yeah, there you go.
But back to what I said when you first told me that. Yep. I said, you look like a very determined person. And so I think...
hey, I'd have tried to kick your butt.
So I think I would have lost a few brain cells.
Yep. No, we'd have been toe to toe, man. Sweat. And you mentioned when you sparred with Kevin, my cousin Kevin Downey, how he was a good inside fighter.
Yes.
Inside fighting is the style of Toronto, man. Toronto was because of George Chavello and all that he brought to it. I'd have been on your body like white on rice, man.
That's why I would have been on my bicycle.
There you go. So that would have been a good fight. So here you are, a black cop, going to fight in the Olympics. Didn't happen, and it embittered you somewhere. As I read through your book, there's a bitterness that came out of that because you should have been there. You should have represented Canada. You were the #1 guy at the time. I wasn't. You should have represented Canada.
Well, looking back, it was not only bitterness, it was the way I was treated. It was a condescending, threatening manner in which I was treated. There were other members there that of Halifax City Police. One was a golfer, another one was a target shooter. And okay, they weren't allowed to travel, but they were allowed to take part in their sports locally. I was not even permitted to take part in my sports locally, although I did. But when the threats come, we're going to take you off the payroll, and while I'm working a beat while somebody else is playing baseball, and I'm taking their place, that's where the I wouldn't call it the anger came in. Bitterness to me.
Do you think it was the umbrella of racism that affected you?
I think the umbrella of racism was one, the way they treated me, and number two, when they started to play politics with race. Well, we got a good black guy here. We can send him over there. Look good for the black community. No, he'd better as a first black sergeant or whatever. So they started that. And I'm not a politician. I don't subscribe to politics. I just do what has to be done. So when that happened, I sort of, I was angry. Bitterness won't get you anywhere, but anger is the defining emotion of the black experience.
Because Owen Corkadale had an uncle, and I met that uncle, I think 74, and he was telling me that he tried to be an RCMP in the 60s, probably mid to late 60s, and they told him straight up, we don't need any black people in the RCMP at that time. And that embittered him. He thought, well, of course you need it. There's guys like Rick here that want to take over the country. If he's here, then I got to be here. That kind of stuff. Right. So they did need it, but they didn't accept it as their reality. But now,
well, there's plenty of examples of black police officers, of black people applying for policing. In Craig Smith's book, You Better Be White by 6 a.m., where they were anything could be done. They wrote things that they didn't think that anybody would see. black people becoming RCMP members, but it's also geared to racial tailoring.
Now here in Toronto, we have a black chief of police. Do you think that the umbrella of racism has dissipated over the years, or it's still there? I'll tell you something. Within the Correction Service of Canada, they've hired more black people, but the core, the base of that organization still has a lot of racism in it. They haven't been able to weed it all out yet.
Well, in my book, I talk about the hiring of black people, and there's nothing to say they're not going to be more brutal. I also talk about white police officers who I saw work in the black community, and they worked in the black community as good as any group, as any other group. And it's not about the color; it's about the way that you treat individuals. And I've named people in the book that worked in this manner, and I saw them work. Never ever had they been in touch or been around black people before, but they were treating people with respect and dignity.
Well, they got a guy in this community. His name is Nick Mayacanis. And when I first came back to this community from Vancouver, and I'm assessing the community, and just like you said, my mindset, I can't erase the fact that I was a crime boss. It's how I think. It's what I do. I'm trying to change that. I'm looking at Nick, and I'm putting it in perspective. He's entrenched in this community. He's going into people's houses, eating with their food. You see him with old ladies, you see him helping carrying stuff out, unloading trucks, off duty also. So he's integrated himself into this community. And when I see him moving around as a crime promoter and one of the better ones, I know that he's making my job harder. Just because he's a friendly guy, he's exhibiting no racism towards anybody. He's coming off hours to help in community projects. And I'm saying to myself, if I wanted to score these young guys here, get them down a good road of rebellion, revolution, and crime, he's making it harder for me. And those kind of cops are needed in these communities. He's that kind of cop, but you were that kind of cop also when you were doing this.
Well, the beat cop who doesn't go in the community to hunt, who doesn't go in the community to make stats so that he can be promoted, but goes into the community and works with that community, will be respected. Because you show up in a uniform, you don't get
exactly.
respect. You earn the respect. And as I always say, even a dog knows the difference between being kicked and being tripped over.
Yep, for sure. So, and that's what I see.
You make mistakes and people are forgiving.
So from your experience in policing, and it's a vast experience you have, you've been in the job a long time, and you just hit it right on the nose. And you're talking about that coming into the community. And in your book, I read it, and it resonated really good because you know what you're talking about. It changes the script, man. And I just can't say that enough. There was a cop, I was walking along down that street, a cop pulls up to me and says, "Hey, Burrhead, get off the street." And he almost hit me with his car. 20 minutes later, he's laying on the floor of his car, screaming for his life. I got 50 kids here to attack him. I put it in my book. So he suffered his racial indiscretion almost immediately. And he learned that this community here will respond to the calling you give them, throwing rocks at them, and at times shooting at them and doing stuff at them. So I can't see that ever happening to Nick, just how he walks through this community. I can't see anybody here saying, "Nick called me an asshole, he called me that. Can you 50 guys get bricks and rocks and come with me and we'll smash him out?" I can't see it happening. I could see like, no, we need him tomorrow because he's going to do this and he's going to do that. It's a script changer, man. And you hit it on the nose in your book. And I would say that cops should pay attention to that. They should pay attention to how you come into a neighborhood and what you do in that neighborhood resonates for years. You could stop a gangbanger like me. You save yourself millions of dollars and 50 to 100 other guys going down that same route. And your method does that.
But today, for a number of reasons, people being on their cell phones all their life, people calling themselves a service and they look like an army, where they were a force before, people who don't want to talk or communicate or can't talk or communicate, or you have people who have lost their history of what was done in the past. They have this, and they don't seem to want to do this. So to a significant number of people, because I talk about elephants in the room, I become a threat the better I am, as opposed to the other way around.
It shouldn't be, because we need you. You stepped up to the plate. The black community needs you to represent us, not to let us go, but to give us an idea that there's a way out from what we're doing. When I say to guys, there's no way out, the man's going to always be on you. You got to go my way or the highway. They kind of believe that. And yet then they see examples like you and Nick, that no, you're wrong. There is another way out.
There's so many examples of black police officers that I work with and white police officers. And that's why my face is blurred out to a degree. Is that this could be anybody. And from a black perspective, this is every black person has gone through this. I was just lucky enough to be able to expose some of the things that were done to me.
So we're speaking about policing and power. And in your book, you talked about black entertainers, black football players, black athletes not really having any power because they don't really own anything. They're just totems. Like you said in your book, you were looked at as a totem, and they're just totems to the greater white society, and we have no real power behind them. Muhammad Ali, the most powerful black man in the world at his time, but how much change could he have really done? And do you like to talk on that?
Well, I think one person, we have to change a mindset. We have to change a mindset. If you read the book Black on Black Violence and the Surface of White Domination by Dr. Amos Wilson, we were indoctrinated into violence. People say, well, what do you mean? Well, drive-by shootings, bling, fine-looking ladies. That's the Untouchables. We saw that on TV growing up.
So you would attribute some of the television programming as affecting the neighborhood because who are your leaders? Who are you going to follow? You're going to follow what you see most. And what you see most is what you see on TV. Right.
And the black church has always been a constant in our communities. But the black church doesn't teach us about economics. The black church doesn't teach us about how we should conduct ourselves in those 9 major areas of people activity that I mentioned.
They just taught primarily obedience.
Well, it's turned into Sunday morning discos.
Yeah, I don't go to church now. It's been a long time.
I just watch it. That's what it's turned into. And we should be digging in deeper into each individual to let them know about finance.
So in Halifax, there's a greater momentum towards going to church, I'd say, in the black community than here.
Well, the church is needed. You have to have a foundation. Because when you run out, you have to. But a religion that says to me that I should take abuse here now and I'll be better in the hereafter, it's not a religion.
You've been hearing that for 400 and something years.
That's right. That's not a religion that I subscribe to. And I don't believe in organized religion. I believe in spirituality, and I believe in a creator or a higher power.
Do you have native blood in you?
A very, very little bit.
Well, a little bit counts. So that could be a reason for that kind of thinking because it's around you all the time, especially in our mixed race Nova Scotian family. We call ourselves Afro-Métis for that reason, right? So there is say an acceptance of that form of spirituality. The creator, that energy that created all this doesn't have an identity. We're not going to name it something. It's just there, right? Yeah, I get that. So you mentioned walking the beat. We mentioned that. Now I want to get more into the politics of policing. And in the later part in your book, you explain that, the methodologies of stuff they do and the stuff you think that's important in policing right now. And a message has to come out of that for the greater community, for my black brothers and sisters in this community to respond to what you're saying. You know what you're talking about. They're going to watch this show and they want to hear from Kelvin.
Well, you're putting it in generalities to a degree, so I'm not quite sure where you want me to start or stop.
Start anywhere you want.
Politics.
Okay, what it is
before performance.
All right.
That's always never let anybody tell you any different. Politics comes before performance. When you have chiefs, deputy chiefs, commissioners, they are politicians that are in police uniforms. I work from the ground up, not from the top down. So when you have things like carding, when you have things like race-based collecting, how do you do that? No one's ever given me an example how you do that. Show me how to do that. You be the policeman, and I'll be.
Especially in this neighborhood versus that neighborhood. Yeah.
True, because you treat people the same, but you don't police neighborhoods the same. You're not going to police the east side of Vancouver the way that you do the west side of Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in this methodology of policing then and identitying it, what can you tell the kids here to say, because they're going to watch this, the kids in this neighborhood aren't going to say, Kelvin's a pig. Kelvin's this. We shouldn't listen to him. They're going to say, Kelvin has a message. What is it? And that's what I'm trying to get at. What's the message you, as an experienced cop, can give these kids? I say, don't do what I did. Do what I say to do. That prison's no joke, and make the right choice, because I don't want to see you there, and you also don't want to see those kids there.
See, I could say that, but I don't have the street cred.
Yeah.
They'd brush me off if I said what you just said. Yeah. But you can say that. What I would say is that you got to find a way as youth to pick something that you want to do. Mm-hmm. And this is not pie in the sky. It's climbing that rung.
It's a big apple.
That ladder every day, and do not let anyone divert you from your goal. And I've had people that love me say, "You'll never be a boxer."
Don't let anyone flip your switch.
That's right. Don't let anybody flip your switch. I've had
That's
people
right.
who said, "You'll never be a boxer," who love me and were related to me.
So in the absence of fathers in the community, can police fill that spot? I see that with this Nick guy in the community, because there's kids around here that don't have fathers, and they come up to him and they ask him questions that they would ask a big brother. Should police be the big brothers of the community? Should they take that role?
Well, if police officers walk the beat, then they become part of the village. And it takes a village to raise a child.
Exactly, yeah. So you're saying, yeah.
Yes.
And they naturally do that. It should be in your mandate to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what all this walking the beat means, right?
Because what they're talking about is police-community relations. That is police-community relations.
So now I see cops rolling around in tanks, and there's no connection. I was a Black Panther guy, so I'm a rebellious guy. I know how to make a bazooka. I know how to make explosives and that. When I see tanks, really not that scared of them. They do scare the rest of the community. Are they needed?
Well, I would say, here's what I'm saying. From a policing perspective, because of today, and you look at the U.S., you look at these areas, everything that you got is needed, but it doesn't have to be used.
Okay.
You use it sparingly.
Well, we have nuclear bombs, and at the end of the day, we have them, and they can be used, but we're not. We hope we don't use them, right?
And you have police with rifles. You have police officers with M16s. You have police officers with whatever you have should be set aside, and you pick. But the best thing that you have is verbal.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the best thing you got is your mouth, and you got to talk to people who are afraid, people who are angry, to de-escalate and not escalate.
That's right. And that's the key. So that happened to my aunt here. I put that in my book. They took my aunt, drug her along the street, beat her with billies, calling her racial names, and this neighborhood just exploded after that. And every cop then became a target, even though it wasn't every cop. So the elders in the neighborhood were running around, yo, put your shit away. That cop had nothing to do with it. That cop had nothing to do with it. That cop did. This guy's here to help. And it just threw this whole neighborhood into a tizzy for a few weeks as we tried to figure out which cops were the good cops and which cops were the bad cops.
Well, when a racial powder keg goes off, there's no safe people and there's no safe place.
Exactly.
And I have, you see the Black community, and if you don't mind if I can get this in, the Black community and the police community have a lot in common. Okay, and I sometimes I'll just I don't want to forget them. So both are not going away. This is the biggest thing. The police aren't going away, and the Black community aren't going away. Both want to go home safe at the end of the day. Both get in trouble for snitching. Both have their own culture. The good cops, the bad cops hide within the good cops. Right? The people in the community that commit crimes go back to the community and hide. Both don't want to be judged as a group. You don't want to be judged as a Black person. I don't want to be judged as a cop. Now, the police took the oath. So the onus is on the police.
That's right, they did.
Because they took the oath.
To uphold the law and help create the safer, better community that could move forward. Yeah. The bad guys don't take oaths. We don't take oaths.
No.
Yeah. The only oath we take is to ourselves. To get back or to get paid or to get up from under, that kind of stuff.
But the police took the oath. And this is what I say when they say, well, what about black on black violence? I say, well, yeah, that's a topic. But that's not a topic for police because police are the ones who took the oath. Nobody took the oath for black on black violence, which is wrong and which we should discuss.
So here is, I was a crime promoter in the police museum, good at what I did. You're good at what you do. So I want you to assert me. I want you to be able to say to the kids in this neighborhood that guys like me can't be that effective and creating something for them down the road, something good, some pot at the end of the rainbow, when you know what I'm up against. I'm up against you, and I'm up against all that you bring to that. Did you want to tell these kids what they're up against? Because I'm going to tell them it's all gravy, man, and that we could roll around Kelvin because Kelvin's slow and he's not moving fast like he used to anymore, and he can't get on the phone and call all the guys that he used to call before, but we can because we're homies. What do you got to say to that? Because I want you to take the position of the man and put me in my place.
Well, here's what I would say. I want you to compare it to being a basketball star in the NBA or a football star. No, very few people make it. And when you do make it, if you do make it in crime, you're never relaxed. You're never.
I say that all the time.
So it depends on what lifestyle you want.
And you're not going to let me be relaxed, but I want you to say how and why you're not going to. We all know that's your mandate.
Because there's always somebody that's going to take your place and is going to try and take it, just like football or basketball. There's always going to be somebody.
There's always going to be a most valuable player.
That's correct. Yeah. And you're going to get cut from the team someday.
Yeah, that's right.
How you want to get cut from the team someday.
That's right. I always say the same thing, and in lieu of what you're saying, I said in crime, we took over a country. I got it in my book. You can't go higher than that. I was going to bring in 500 keys of blow into a month into this neighborhood, and I decided not to at the last minute and abandoned that conspiracy. But that's what you'd have been up against, a thinker like me doing that. And I convinced a lot of people to come with me. And I know you can say that don't listen to Rick, that the end of the rainbow is not that good, because I say the same thing, but you say it differently than me. You give them a different out than I give them. My out is prison or death, or we make it. You have a different out.
But we also have a moral aspect. When you look at the movie Gangster with Denzel, resourceful, disciplined, dedicated. What if he had to turn that into helping his community instead of putting drugs in the community?
So all that energy and that intellect that goes into making crime profitable can be turned around to making legitimate business profitable, and you don't have that negative end result. If you screw up in legitimate business, you just shake it off and go back at it. When you screw up in crime, you're either planted in the ground or you're walking the penitentiary yard. That's it.
But wouldn't it be better for younger people to get up and want to go to a job?
100%.
Work for your own people, for your own culture, for your own benefit, and have your family and have the community respect you, as opposed to the other.
And you hit that right on the nose. Because I met this girl, and because respect is everything a gangster's about. It's all about respect. Sometimes it's not about the money, the bling, the power. It's about respect. And I told her I'm the most known guy in this neighborhood. And she goes, I've never heard of you. And she only lived a few blocks away. So her reality was different than my reality. And that's a gangbanger's thing. I thought as a gangbanger out of Alexander Park that everybody in the downtown core knew who I was because I was the baddest, toughest guy in the neighborhood. And I come to realize that hardly anybody knew who I was. Just a small clique of guys knew who I was. And that was my reality, which wasn't the real picture. The real picture was I was just a small clog in the wheel trying to get by. And there's this greater world out there. You're part of that greater world. You've always been part of that greater world. And not only that, you entered policing to make that world better for the other guys in your neighborhood. Any last words you want to say?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And
my pleasure.
I'm available to have discussions with people. People can challenge what I think, the way I am. I'm not saying that what I say is right. I'm just saying that's one perspective that was put in a book.
Yeah. So I'm a gangbanger, former gangbanger, and you're a former cop. And I think if we work together to send the messages out to kids in school, because you come from a certain vantage point that it's a disadvantage for me. And of course, I come from a certain disadvantage point that's a vantage for me, because I'm a former gangbanger. And I think the synergy between the two of us works. Plus, we're two top badass boxers, too.
That's right.
Back to back. No one's going to beat us. So glad to have you on the show, Kelvin. Yeah, it was a pleasure, man. And another time, once your book starts kicking and stuff starts happening, we'll have you back again. Yeah, great. Thanks for watching this show. It was very interesting talking to Kelvin. There's a future with cons like me or ex-cons like me, working with ex-cons like that, trying to bring this wholeness to a community that's broken and fractured. So that's what this show was about. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for our next show.